Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 11, Text 13. Okay. Titikshaya Karunaya Maitraya Chakila Jantushu Samadvena Cha Sarvatma Bhagavan Samprasidati Titikshaya Karunaya Maitraya Chakila Jantushu Samadvena Cha Sarvatma Bhagavan Samprasidati Titikshaya Karunaya Maitraya Chakila Jantushu Samadvena Cha Sarvatma Bhagavan Samprasidati. Titikshaya Karunaya Maitraya Chakila Jantushu Samadvena Cha Sarvatma Bhagavan Samprasidati. Titikshaya Karunaya Maitraya Chakila Jantushu Samadvena Cha Sarvatma Bhagavan Samprasidati. Titikshaya Karunaya Maitraya Chakila Jantushu Samadvena Cha Sarvatma Bhagavan Samprasidati. Titikshaya Karunaya Maitraya Chakila Jantushu Samadvena Cha Sarvatma Bhagavan Samprasidati. Titikshaya Karunaya Maitraya Chakila Jantushu Samadvena Cha Samatva Bhagavan Samprasidati. Titikshaya Karunaya Maitraya Chakila Jantushu Samadvena Cha Sarvatma Bhagavan Samprasidati. Titikshaya by tolerance, Karunaya by mercy, Maitraya by friendship, Cha also, Akila universal, Jantushu unto the living entities, Samadvena by equilibrium, Cha also, Sarvatma, Sarva Atma, the Supersoul, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Samprasidati, becomes very satisfied. Translation. The Lord is very satisfied with his devotee when the devotee greets other people with tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. It is the duty of an advanced devotee in the second stage of devotional perfection to act in accordance with this verse. There are 3 stages of devotional life. In the lowest stage, a devotee is simply concerned with the deity in the temple, and he worships the Lord with great devotion, according to the rules and regulations. In the second stage, the devotee is cognizant of his relationship with the Lord, his relationship with fellow devotees, his relationship with persons who are innocent, and his relationship with persons who are envious. Sometimes devotees are ill-treated by envious persons. It is advised that an advanced devotee should be tolerant. He should show complete mercy to persons who are ignorant or innocent. A preacher devotee is meant to show mercy to innocent persons whom he can elevate to devotional service. Everyone, by constitutional position, is an eternal servant of Krishna. Therefore, a devotee's business is to awaken everyone's Krishna consciousness. That is his mercy. As far as for a devotee's treatment of other devotees who are his equals, he should maintain friendship with them. His general view should be to see every living entity as part of the Supreme Lord. Different living entities appear in different forms of dress, but according to the instruction of the Bhagavad Gita, a learned person sees all living entities equally. Such treatment by the devotee is very much appreciated by the Supreme Lord. It is said, therefore, that a saintly person is always tolerant and merciful. He is a friend to everyone, never an enemy to anyone, and he is peaceful. These are some of the good qualities of a devotee. Titikshaya karunaya maitreya chakila jantushu smadvena cha sarvatma bhagavan samprasidati. The Lord is very satisfied with his devotee when the devotee greets other people with tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Tute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. To the devotees sitting on the side, it would be very nice if you could just come forward, grab a chair, so then we can connect with you a little bit better. Thank you. It's so rare that we get guests in the morning, so we're always happy when people come. It's an important verse. Not that any verse is not important, but I looked up in Srimad Bhagavatam class.com, and there were so many devotees who spoke about this, like a 2-part series by Borijan Prabhu, 3 lectures by Sachinandan Swami, and like a whole host of devotees. And it's not surprising. Where we are in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Swayambhuva Manu is speaking to Dhruva after Dhruva goes through this whole massacre, killing people because his brother was killed by a yaksha. And so he attacks the whole tribe of yakshas. And then his Swayambhuva Manu, his ancestor, elder, comes to tell him that this is not exactly nice, so maybe now you should stop. And then we find this verse that Swayambhuva Manu is saying, the Lord is satisfied when his devotee treats other people with tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. So Swayambhuva Manu in this place, in this space in the Bhagavatam, is basically asking Dhruva, where is your compassion? What has happened to your compassion? And in asking this question, he's also reminding Dhruva of what his spiritual master said earlier on in his life when he met Narada Muni. There's a specific verse that comes up. And Narada Muni tells him, when Dhruva was just a little boy who had gone to the forest in search of Krishna to try and get a kingdom that was greater than his father's. And then he meets a devotee of Krishna, Narada, who gives him instruction on how to fulfill his desires in such a way that he would become free of them. And in doing so, one of the instructions of Narada was this. Narada tells him, every man should act like this. When he meets a person more qualified than himself, he should be very pleased. When he meets someone less qualified than himself, he should be compassionate towards him. When he meets someone equal to him, he should make friendship with him. And in this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of the material world. In the 8th chapter, text 35, Narada is speaking these words to Dhruva. And then Swayambhuva Manu comes, chapters later, when Dhruva's all grown up and ready to do his Kshatriya duty. Swayambhuva Manu comes and reminds him of the words of his spiritual master by reciting this verse. And when we look at it, Srila Prabhupada is saying in the purport that this is the qualities of a second-class devotee. And what is he referring to by second-class devotee? Anybody? The Madhyama, the Madhyam Adhikari, because there's three categories of devotees. First being the Kanista, one whose faith is somewhat pliable. Second is the Madhyama, the intermediate devotee. And then third being the Uttama, which is the highest level devotee. And in this purport, Prabhupada is basically speaking about the first two. I have to say, after reading the purport, I was like, can't we have a few classes like before Kanista? Like, it just feels like don't fit in fully here. But when we're reading now about the qualities of the Madhyam, of the second-class devotee that Prabhupada is presenting, even if we feel like, okay, it's not where I'm at, it's still important for us to hear these qualities and try to aspire for them. Why? Because one of the things that Srila Prabhupada said is that we should try to strive for the qualities of the Madhyam. And that at least come to the platform of Madhyam, he had said. And why? Because the Madhyam Adhikari is on the level of Nishta. In the process of devotional service, there's different stages. First, you just meet you have this shraddha, you have some faith, like, okay, maybe I should do this, maybe I should walk into the temple, And then comes sadhu sangha, where you're associating with devotees. And then comes shraddha, sadhu sangha, bhajana kriya, right? Yeah, where you're now adopting the process of devotional service. Anartha nivritti, all the unwanted things come out from the heart. And then nishta, where your practice becomes firm. And wouldn't it be really nice to have steady devotional service? I think that would be a really nice, beautiful stage. And Prabhupada is saying, come to that stage of nishta, because that's where the Madhyama level sort of starts. And in different places in the Shastra, the Madhyam devotee is described by different things. One is the taste that he has in the holy name, that he or she has in the level of faith that they have in the holy name. And the other is by their knowledge, how well they know the Shastra and how much they're in line with it. However, in this verse, Srila Prabhupada is taking a different route, according to the verse, that the Madhyama is now described by how they relate with human beings. And that's really interesting, because imagine if the quality of our devotion is rated by how we relate to people in our space and the world. And so when we read the qualities that is suggested here, Srila Prabhupada is saying that the options are given for, the list is given of tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. Now, one thing is that it's a very positive list. And one thing we could learn is by what's not in the list. There's what's in the list, and then there's what's not in the list. What's not in the list? Things like, I was thinking of things not in the list. Things like venting our frustrations on each other. Things like guilt tripping, humiliating somebody else. Things like ignoring, gossiping, cold shouldering. All these kind of things are not in the list, So Prabhupada gives us this list of compassion, tolerance, mercy, and equality. And he's saying that all living entities in creation deserve any one of these behaviors. All. Now, the first person that comes to my mind when I think about this is Vaisheshika Prabhu. Because he just has this way, this means of making everyone feel like a friend. It just comes so naturally to him. It's ingrained in every atom of his existence. And one of the principles that comes up in his book, Our Family Business, that in every encounter that you have with any individual person, leave them with a good impression. Now, when he says it, he doesn't mean like when you have an interview and you give your CV, and then you need to leave the interviewer with a good impression of who you are. It's not like that. But leaving everyone with a good impression means that if we present ourselves, and even if you don't present yourself, as a devotee of Krishna, because sometimes, have you noticed, you're not in a sari, you're not wearing a tilak, your neck beads is not shown, but they just know you're Hare Krishna. Somehow they know you're a Hare Krishna, whoever it is you meet, And then, so therefore, ultimately, you become a representative of Krishna. So leaving everyone, of Guru and Krishna, of Srila Prabhupada and Krishna, and so leaving everyone with a good impression means that our interaction, based on our interaction with them, their faith in the process and in the Supreme Lord will alter, either positively or negatively. So therefore, we're not necessarily giving our CV. It's Krishna's CV we're handing over in every interaction we have with every living being. And so, therefore, trying that in all our interactions we leave with a good impression. So Prabhupada is saying, if the person is envious. Now, Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu mentioned in his class, which was yesterday, was it? That the envious person should be avoided. And it's true, the Shastra tells us that the envious person should be avoided. But in this context, Srila Prabhupada says the envious person should be tolerated. So how do we resolve the two? It means if someone is really inimical and envious and does not want to have anything to do with Krishna or you, or maybe they're personally envious, of you as a person, then maybe tolerating them means not instigating it. Just let it be. If it's not harming you personally or emotionally, maybe just let the person be. Leaving things alone can also be a solution, But of course, it has to be addressed in the whole totality of the situation. When Prabhupada is saying then that with mercy should be shown to the innocent and to the ignorant, and that means who? It doesn't mean that I look at anybody that's lower than my status. It just means every living entity, looking at every living entity and thinking, how can they connect to Krishna? Because how can we give mercy? What is our capacity? What is our ability to actually transmit mercy to another person? It's really impossible. The only valid method we have is by connecting them to something that's Krishna related. We have no other capacity. So whether it means, a small, some prasad that they really like, or whether it means connecting them to some program, some class, some book that you think that their nature is inclined to, or something like that, or whether it means just being a friend and hearing them out and knowing what's happening in their lives so that they feel heard as a person, and then seeing how they can connect to Krishna. All these means, is how we can show mercy. Mercy in the sense that we keep the door open. That the doors are always open for someone to walk in and be willing to take shelter of Krishna. And the third thing that Prabhupada mentions is friendship. Friendship with equals. Now, it's a hard thing when you have to is this person my equal? Is they my equal? Like, should I be friends with them? And that's not the mood. The mood is that for people who are like-minded, to in that situation be able to reveal our minds confidentially. We don't tell everybody everything. That is normal, that is natural. But Prabhupada says further down in the purport, he says that a saintly person is always tolerant and merciful, and he is a friend to everyone. And equal is a friend to everyone, never an enemy to anyone. He is peaceful. Now, Prabhupada is now calling for equality, right, with the third person. And the fourth person. The fourth person being every living entity in the universe. Like, he's not leaving anybody out here. Every living entity in the universe. It is our duty to see them with equal vision, because they are part and parcel of Krishna. Simply that. It is enough for a person to exist in our space and be treated with respect and friendship simply because they are part and parcel of Krishna. They don't need any other qualification for us to do that. But Prabhupada is asking for us to be equal, right? And then he's giving us a list of how to differentiate by how we treat people. And both are not contradictory, because all interactions have to be positive. On a baseline level, the minimum we can offer a person is to respect them as a living entity that is part and parcel of Krishna. That's the minimum. And now he says friendship amongst equals, but then he also says friendly to every living being. And that's because whilst we may reveal our hearts and our minds in confidence to someone who's a friend on our level or maybe higher, but we still need to offer every living being friendship. And that can come into the form of a smile, that can come in the form of a greeting, that can just come in such simple forms that is not difficult for us to execute. And in doing so, what happens when we actually do this? Why I was thinking about this as I was mentioning it, that after some years of doing BYS, I realized that when I came home to the temple, my be a good friendly person Rukmini hat came off, and I just became normal and did whatever I need to do with blink, like if I did whatever I need to do, then it was okay, and I could forget that the rest of the universe existed. And then when I was back in campus, then the BYS hat came back on, and I remembered that I must be nice, friendly, and kind to people. But that's not what the verse is saying. The verse is saying that in the true depth of a devotee, that these qualities must naturally develop. That naturally we act that way. Why? Because we value each living entity as part and parcel of Krishna. We're investing in that vision. It's not theory. And what happens when we develop that vision? What's the most amazing thing that could happen when we execute these principles of tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality? We shift from me to somebody else. Just that. We shift the focus from me to somebody else. And therefore the thing is that the Madhyam devotee has conquered selfishness. It's just simply conquered selfishness. And so sometimes Kadambakana Swami says how in spiritual life it can become how my spiritual life is a very, very nice spiritual life, and I have a nice spiritual bhajan kutir with all my favorite spiritual pictures on the wall, and I have my stack of lectures, and the cat is a vegetarian and the canary chants Hare Krishna. It's like where we become comfortable in our spiritual bubble. And therefore to step one foot out, anybody who's ever had to go on the street and distribute books, the hardest thing sometimes is to just put that foot out of the door, and it takes a lot of effort to just say hi. It does, I know, I feel it, But in doing so, we transfer the focus from just me and my spiritual life to what is the tiny, insy-bitsy, teeny-weeny little thing that I could do to be a friend to somebody else. Now, one misconception, like Srila Prabhupada says here, that the preacher devotee, I never heard that term before. I think one misconception could be, is what it means to be a preacher devotee. What it does, maybe we can start with the negative, is what it doesn't mean is that it's not limited to somebody who just sits on the Vyasasana and speaks. Somebody who takes their bags of books and goes out the door to conquer the world. What you can do today, Pinky, take over the world. And you're somebody that, is planning huge projects and, pulling off a Rath Yatra. No, it's in the simple things. Because every devotee within our movement is linked to the mission of Lord Chaitanya. So every little service that we do should be executed with the vision of the Sankirtan mission. Now we take darshan of the deities. And when we see Radha Radhanath, when we serve Radha Radhanath, in whatever capacity, whether it's cleaning the vegetables or cooking or sweeping the floor or dressing the deities, we can do it to invest in our own personal devotion, or we can do it with the spirit of Sankirtan. That others are going to take this darshan. And it goes for every single service. It's not about what you do, but the consciousness that we do it with. And when we shift the consciousness, when we shift our consciousness to just try to develop that level of friendship with anybody who Krishna even sends in our circle. You don't have to be the extrovert going to conquer the world. You can be who you are. And the people that Krishna puts in your space, just treat them with friendship, with tolerance, with mercy, with equality. So, what Manu is saying, and I was reading, so what happens when we do that? What happens when we're able to actually attempt to develop these qualities? In the Bhagavatam, Swayambhuva Manu is saying, Krishna becomes samprasidati, satisfied. It's an interesting word. Not just pleased, not just happy, not just yeah, nice. Satisfied. It's like the difference between when you're hungry and you're honoring prasadam and you're full, or you're satisfied. You know the difference? You would have experienced the difference. The difference between just being full and then being deeply satisfied by what you've imbibed. Or sometimes Kadambakana Swami says that as a spiritual master, if a disciple chants 16 rounds, follows the regular principles and does the basic things, should he then be happy? Should he then just automatically, like an ATM withdrawal, ping, you get the mercy? Or should he be deeply satisfied in the heart? What happens when someone's naturally satisfied with a person? It's like the floodgates open and mercy naturally overflows. You don't have to think about being kind to them, just naturally, because they're conquered. So another word for satisfying Krishna, samprasidati, is that he being, developing these qualities of friendship, of tolerance, of mercy, of equality, it's not just there for the people that we do it for, but it brings us closer to Krishna. It brings us in Krishna's blessings book. So, what Manu is telling Dhruva here is change your attitude. Just simply change your attitude. And in small ways, that's not difficult. But simply a change of attitude so that the qualities of a madhyam can begin to bud within our hearts. Now, Sachinandan Swami was mentioning that to deeply, deeply imbibe these qualities is impossible. Because you find people in the world impossible without proper sadhana and depth in knowledge. So it's not just some people have this nature or character that they like being around people, or that they're extrovert, or that they're a people's person, kind of thing. But it's every devotee's journey that by the practice of our sadhana, by the practice of imbibing spiritual knowledge, naturally these qualities bloom in our heart in a natural way. We don't have to force it, in a natural way. And that's true, because other people in the world may have these qualities, but then we exploit them simply for their own CV. But when you're putting forward Krishna's CV, then these qualities naturally come through our practice of sadhana and our knowledge of the Shastra and our practice of chanting Hare Krishna. So, I guess to round up, what I would want to say is that it would be nice as a devotee for myself if I stopped having a preacher hat and started having a friendship heart, because that would be so much more natural, and people will so much will naturally feel that and connect to that, when I have to put Krishna's CV forward. So I'm going to stop here. There's a few minutes for questions or thoughts if we want to. The verse again is: the Lord is very satisfied with his devotee when the devotee greets other people with tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. So, does anybody have any thoughts or any questions or anything they'd like to share?
Hare Krishna. Yeah, I guess this is a verse we should speak on for the entire week. There's so much in it. But I was thinking about when you referenced Vaisheshika Prabhu, I was just thinking about his standard of preaching. I'm not sure whether it's his line or he quotes somebody, but he says the best preacher is the Goshtyanandi, is the Bhajananandi, who's very deeply attached to his hearing and chanting and sadhana, is a Bhajananandi who preaches. Because he's getting his natural ability to interact with other living entities and to attract them to Krishna from the strength of his personal bhajan, from his personal practices. And he also says that when we are preaching, we are really meant to be distributing the overflow of our sadhana. So if we are practicing our hearing and chanting and sadhana really nicely, then we develop taste, we develop attraction and affection for Krishna, and what's flowing out of our capacity, we're sharing that with the living entities. And I like the point about when you quoted Sachinandan Swami, is that you do find people out there that are amazingly friendly, that are amazingly compassionate, caring, we can be kind, like euthanasia for pets is considered to be very kind. But from a larger perspective, it's not really kindness. It's actually a form of cruelty. But from a mundane, moralistic perspective, we may see all these qualities. But if they disconnect it from Krishna, then they may not be really what they seem. They may be actually relative. But still, when we see somebody who is kind and compassionate and generous and friendly, but they're not devotees, we shouldn't have this thought, oh, but that's useless, We should also appreciate that there's something there, because Krishna is in their heart. There's something there as well. But we should strive not to just extraneously develop it, but more depend on our good practice of bhakti for those qualities to automatically develop. And at the same time, try to develop it simultaneously.